I'm gonna hit the okay, perfect. So we're gonna pick up from where we left off last week. You had just begun to discuss some of the halachos, the laws related to some of the minhagim, the practices that people do. Oh, I just need to record on my phone. 1 second. Forgot to do that. Hit record on my phone. Um, yeah, so we were picking up from where we left off last week, which is the practices of uh, during the sphere that some people we have the practices of mourning. Um, so we mentioned at the very end of last year for review that there are different practices of when people actually actually do the minhagim of Avelis, when they actually practice mourning. So we mentioned that some people do from the first day of when we count the Omer until the morning of Lag BaOmer. That's that's and then for Spartan until the next day. So that's one school of thought. So you go from the first day one of the Omer, until day 33, day 34. There are those. School number two is basically to start from Rosh Chodesh ER. So that's already like 14 days or so into the Omer and then go until almost Shavuot. So that's another. Some people do like one day off. They start from the second day, one day after Rosh Chodesh until Erev Shavuos. But that's basically another school of thought. It's to basically push it off 14 days and then you go to the end. Instead of stopping at Lag BaOmer, you go all the way to the end of the counting. And then there is the and the third school of thought, which is to just do the entire Omer, go from 149. So that's another way that people do it. So again, one doesn't know what minhag there is, they can technically do anyone they want. Um, and the Ramah says that though in one city people shouldn't do different minhagim, but he says that's actually not so relevant. He's like because for you to do one thing and everyone else doing a different thing, that's a prohibition of low go to do. But nowadays our cities are so big, everyone has different practices, so it's not really so relevant. So last week we spoke about getting married. That practice is not to get married, but it is permitted to get engaged. And the Shabbat says that why is it permitted to get engaged if it's not permitted to get married during this time? Because you're worried that someone might get to the person first. So we let you get engaged. So question is that the Mishnah Brura says that one should not have dancing shal rishus, meaning dancing rishus means voluntary. So one shouldn't just do any dancing for no reason, or for meaning not for a mitzvah. So the question would be, so if you're at an engagement party, right, it's permitted to get engaged, so it would seem like people, once they get engaged, they would want to make an engagement party. So would you be able to do dancing at the engagement party? So some say, is that really a mitzvah? But I think a lot of people are Makel, Rabbi Leibowitz from YU. He was lenient about this. He permitted dancing at an engagement party when there was no music. Like if people were just singing, he said that's not a problem because that's not real dancing. So there'd be music. That's really dependent upon the next discussion, which is that the Aruch HaShulchan, he writes that just like it is prohibited to dance, one should also not play instruments or listen to instruments being played during this period of the Omer, whenever you practice the morning period of the Omer. So there's difference of opinions among the later poskim about how far to extend that and what is permitted in terms of recorded music. Because times of the Shulchan Aruch, they didn't really have recorded music. This is a newer thing. Now recorded music is so available to us, you can get it on your phone anytime you want. Press of a button. So there are different opinions among the poskim. Some say um, no music is allowed whatsoever, even people singing. There's that opinion. There's some opinion that say that you can listen to music as long as there aren't instruments being played. So that's what we would call a cappella. That's what Moshe's opinion. A cappella is permitted. Some people held it depends on the type of music. That if you're listening to music which is going to make you happy, that music not okay. But if you're listening to music which is going to make you sad, then that's okay because that's like mourning. But there are different practices, and if one wants to listen to music, they should just discuss with their their rabbi what is the best practice for them. Um, another thing that people do or don't do during the Omer is the Shulchan Aruch writes that the practice is not to get a haircut until Lag Omer because that is when the Talmidim stop dying. So when we say get a haircut, it means don't cut your hair. It also means don't shave your beard, which is why if you look at me, I usually don't have such a big beard, but right now I have a very big beard, very big. Looks like a rebbe. Um, not yet, but it's definitely a bigger beard than normal. So the Rama says there's a leniency. He says if you're making like a bris, you're making a bris since the Moel or in the father and the person, the Sandik, they can all get a haircut, they can shave. That's not a problem. So the Rama already gives us our first leniency in terms of getting a haircut. Um, Later poskim, like Ramosha, they permit someone who lives with non-Jews, who wouldn't really understand. They say they can get a haircut and shave during this part of the sphere if it's going to impact their livelihood, it's going to impact their job, then that would be permitted. Some people are more strict than that, and some people say, there's the real the Jew is from real Poland. He says that the Arizal, so the Kabbalistic practice is to not shave during the entire counting of the Omer. Um, so there are different opinions about this. I think the opinion of YU, the Rav Schechter, I think I've heard people say that I have heard it. I may have even heard him himself once say that it's permitted to shave on Friday out of kavod of Shabbos. That respect for Shabbos, if you feel like you need to shave, that would be permitted. On the OU's website, they say a small number of halachic authorities allow one to shave during the sphere in honor of Shabbos. I assume that it would be referring to Rav Schechter. And it is known about Rav Soloveitchik that he permitted those who normally shave every day, someone who shaves every single day, says that would not be a problem during these days of sphere. So but a lot of people are strict about it. And they say, better not to shave. I personally like to grow out my beard during this time because if I don't grow it out now, how am I going to know how big it can get? So it's still getting bigger every single year. So I like to see how big it can get. I don't know if my wife likes it so much, but it's okay. Then another thing that is in discussion in Shulchan Aruch is that he says that there is a practice not to do any work after Shkia during the entire days of the Omer. Whoa. So that means as soon as it gets to sunset, Shulchan Aruch says you shouldn't, no more work, no going on your laptop, no do malacha. So that means basically treat it like Shabbos after sunset for all 49 days of the Omer. So the Chok Yaakov says that people aren't really careful about this. So don't worry, you're okay. Because that's good because I think we'd be in violation of that right now is on our computers. And based of it, he writes that nobody is that big of a tzaddik. Nobody can do this. It's a little interesting why the Shulchan Aruch writes it and then nobody actually does it. The Mishnah Berurah explains, he says, he gives you two options. He says there's two reasons maybe why the Shulchan Aruch wrote this idea about not doing work after sunset during the days of the Omer. So reason number one, perhaps, is because the students of Rabbi Akiva were buried each night after Shkia, after sunset, and the entire Bnei Yisrael, entire Jewish population, they were dealing with these burials at night. So to commemorate that, we don't do any work once it gets sunset. That's reason number one. There's perhaps another reason is that this is the time of the counting of the Omer. So according to reason number two, though, once you count the Omer, then it should be okay for you to do work. So even though Shulchan Aruch says it seems like a practice is that people do malacha after sunset. Then now we'll get into discussion of Lag Baomer. Well, first as it relates to these practices. So on Lag Baomer, um, it is permitted to get a haircut. So this is very interesting because the Shulchan Aruch, just as far as we do, they say he says you can get a haircut on Lag Baomer, but not on Lag Baomer. You have to wait until the next day. He says you'd have to actually wait till the 34th of the Omer to get a haircut. But the Ramah, he says you can get a haircut on Lag Baomer, but you can't get a haircut in the night. You have to wait until the next morning to get a haircut, also to shave. So that's the difference between Sephardim and Ashkenazim. But this is very important this year. It's the perfect time to say this because the Ramah, he writes, let's say, hypothetically, which is this year, what happens if Lag BaOmer falls out on Sunday? So the Ramah says that one should, because one should, not only that it's allowed, but one should get a haircut on Friday out of Kavod Shabbos. So that would mean this year, since Lag BaOmer falls out on Sunday, when should we get a haircut? Friday. Should shave, should be Friday, out of respect for Shabbos. In some post game, this is already discussion, but some posts can say, what if you're not going to have time on Friday to be able to get a haircut and shave? Because sometimes Fridays get a little bit crazy. And maybe you could even get it already Thursday night. So that's a little bit of discussion there. Another leniency, well, maybe a leniency, the Shulchan Aruch writes that some people, what they do is that when you get to Rosh Chodesh Iyar, so that already passed, so it's not going to be relevant for you anymore. But for next year, to remember that some people, for Rosh Chodesh Iyar, they get a haircut. The Shulchan Aruch says, don't do that. That's a mistake. That's not enough of a special day to get a haircut during the Omer. So don't get a haircut there. But the Mishnah Berurah says, yeah, but what happens if Rosh Chodesh falls out on Shabbos? Now you have Rosh Chodesh plus Shabbos. He says, there you have two reasons to get a haircut and to shave. So then it would be permitted. Of course, if you held like the Shechter, then you say it's anyways permitted to get haircut out of Kavod Shabbos. But there's the extra reason that even the Mishnah Berurah says. Okay, so now we get to Lag BaOmer itself. Lag BaOmer is a little bit of a mysterious holiday. A little bit hard to understand. We grew up hearing a lot about it, but some of it makes sense, some of it doesn't make so much sense. So we'll do our best in the time that we have to explain some of the things of Lag BaOmer. So the Ramah, in this same discussion, he says on Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the Omer, the custom is to, he writes, Laharbos Ktas Simcha, which means to increase a little bit in your joy. That's all the Ramah says. Increase a little bit in your joy. And he says, and also, don't say Tachna. That's what he says. So the Aruch HaShulchan, he says to treat this day like even like it's a little bit of a Yom Tov, a little bit of the holiday. So the question is why? What's special about this day? So there are different explanations. So we'll go through three of them. There may be more, probably are more, but three main explanations of Lag BaOmer. Number one is Shulchan Aruch Harav, which is the Alter Rebbe. So he says that probably the most famous answer, which is that the students of Rebbe Akiva stopped dying on Lag BaOmer. So because of that, we have this big celebration. So, big question, which I saw was asked by the Pri Chada. She said, why should we be so happy because they stopped dying on that day? The only reason that they stopped dying is because all the Talmidim, all the students of Rebbe Akiva were gone. The 24,000 students, and they were all gone. We're going to make this big celebration because they literally died out. So he answers that maybe the great joy is because the students of Rebbe Akiva, because of the students that Rebbe Akiva had after the fact, which did not die like these ones did, and so that's really what we're celebrating. Because some say that this is actually the day that Rebbe Akiva started teaching his new Talmidim, and so maybe that's what we're celebrating. Also, I saw I never saw before, that the Aruch HaShulchan, he writes that perhaps this plague of 24,000 students that Rebbe Akiva died was maybe just a failed Bar Kokhba revolt, which Rebbe Akiva students were killed by the Romans. So I never heard that before. That's an interesting idea. We'd have to probably look more into that, to Jewish history, exactly what happened there. But that is what the Aruch HaShulchan says, perhaps why they all died. So another explanation of why Lag Bomer, second answer, brought by the Chida and the Aruch HaShulchan, they say Lag Bomer is the day of the Hilula of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, which means the day that he left this world. And he also happens to be the same day he left the cave, when Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai left the cave. So out of this honor, we increase our joy. It's also the day Rabbi Kiva started teaching Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and Rabbi Meir. So it's really the day that Torah started returning. So we make this big, great joy. So the question there is that usually we don't think of a yortzeit or the day someone died as like this great, big joy. Sometimes we have a fast on the yortzeit. So the Kaf HaChaim explains that Lag BaOmer is a little bit different because Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai requested that the day that he died become this annual celebration because it's the day which he revealed many secrets of the Torah. That's what the Kaf HaChaim writes. So he says that's why we have this great joy, even though on your side we don't necessarily have this great joy always. A third answer brought by the Chasam Sofer, which is that the Medrash says that on Lag BaOmer, that's the day that the man started following on in the desert. Others question this. It's impossible based on the Gemara that the man really started following on Sunday. It's impossible that Lag BaOmer was on Sunday because Shavuos was on Shabbos. They do the whole math. It's not really possible that the man started following on Lag BaOmer. That's what the Chasam Sofer said based on the Midrash. For Lag BaOmer, shouldn't eat tafnan, one shouldn't fast. Okay, so other practices that happen on Lag BaOmer, as we know that a lot of people go to Meiron. So what's that about? So Rav Ovadia Bartanura, he writes that the 18th day of the Iyar, Lag BaOmer, the Yortzeit of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So people, they all go to Meiron and they light candles. He writes that many women who are barren have been helped, many sick have been healed because of this. And he says that if you're unable to travel to Meiron, please study the teachings of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Some say this is only true in Israel. Others say no, even outside. And that's why there are many rabbis who do these big gatherings on Lag BaOmer in order to honor Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. There's also idea that it's a good thing to visit the graves of other tzaddikim. Lag BaOmer also happens to be the yortzeit of the Ramah, so many visit his grave in Krakow on this day. But yeah, so that's discussion that's brought by the Bartanura to this idea of visiting Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's grave, which is what Meiron is. This I thought was very funny, but interesting point is that many of us count, right? We say it depends on your sitter, but sometimes we'll say, like Hayom is this many days La Omer, and sometimes we'll say Ba Omer. It depends on your sitter, right? Is it La Omer or Ba Omer? So, but if I'm counting and I say, let's say it was like the third day of the Omer, and I said today is 3 days La Omer, so why wouldn't I call it Lag La Omer? Why am I calling it Lag BaOmer? I should say Lag La Omer. So I saw an answer given is that it was decided universally to refer to this day as Lag BaOmer, as these two words are the same gematria as Moshe, referring to the belief that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was a reincarnation of Moshe Rabbeinu. There's also that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai reached the same levels of greatness as Moshe Rabbeinu did. So Moshe has gematria is 345, and Lag BaOmer is 345. So that's why it's universally Lag BaOmer. I don't know, that's a little interesting. There is this discussion about opposition to the Lag BaOmer, something to be aware of. So some quote that this was primarily due to the fact that on Lag BaOmer they had all these big bonfires. People would throw stuff in, and they'd be like wasting their stuff. So because the Baal Tashlich, some Rebbeim didn't like it. The Chasam Sofer also more famously doesn't like it because he didn't like this idea of inventing new holidays that weren't really in the Torah, so he wasn't into it as outside Chazal, so he said he was not really in favor of it. Two discussions that I just want to have is that, okay, so people have the most famous, I think, practices of Lag BaOmer is bonfires that people have, and also this idea of bows and arrows. So what is behind those practices? So I'll give a few explanations for each of them. So bonfires. Why do people have bonfires on Baomer? So first is the idea of the Bartanura, which I mentioned earlier, but I'll say it again, is that the yard side of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So in a letter written in 1489, Bartanura, he reports seeing a bunch of torches lit on Lag Baomer on the grave of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai in honor of his yard site. So the idea would be that just like when anyone has a yard site, they light a candle for the neshama of whoever it is. So too, there's a custom to light these candles, these torches, on the grave of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai because it's his yard site. Right, so that's answer number one. Answer number two of these bonfires is that given by the Bnei Yissaschar, they said that on the day of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the sun did not set. The day he died, the sun did not set until Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai finished teaching all the hidden secrets of Torah to all his Talmidim. So to remember this miraculous event, we light bonfires at night to brighten the sky as though it is still day. Answer number two is okay, so the day was really long, so we do bonfires to remember that the day was really long because Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai had to teach all his Torah out. Third answer is that there were many hidden secrets on Lag Baomer that were revealed to light up the world. So we light fires on the remembrance of the light of his Torah. So the idea of the light of the Torah. And then finally, answer number four is that the Gemara says that Shimon Bar Yochai, when he left the cave, wherever he looked, it was consumed by fire because of his very high spiritual level. So perhaps we light fires to commemorate Shimon Bar Yochai, that how high of a spiritual level he was. So those are four reasons possibly why we have this practice of the bonfires. What about the bows and arrows? So this is a well-known custom that children would play with bows and arrows, and is said to have been alluded to by a pasuk in Divrei Yamin. The pasuk says, "Vayu bnei Lam anashim yidrei chayil dorchei keshet." Means Umar bin Banim bin Banim, Me'alachamishim, Koledim, Me'Binyamin. So the descendants of Ulam, men of substance, who drew the bow, right? Dorchei Keshet. So they have many children, grandchildren, etc. They're from Binyamin. So that's said to have alluded to in this pasuk. And Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, he teaches that playing with these bows and arrows is actually a segula for having children. So that's one. Another is that this is the idea that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, when he was alive, there was never a rainbow seen in the sky. So this is the idea because the rainbow reminds us of God's protection over the world. But when Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was in the world, Hashem didn't even need to protect us with rainbow because we knew that we had Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And so the Hebrew word for bow is keshet. That's why we have bows and arrows. So another reason, this is I think probably my favorite reason. Another reason is that the bows and arrows, it reminds us of the Roman decree on prohibiting the prohibited Torah. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, they take his students and they go to the forest and they take bows and arrows in order to study Torah there. And whenever a Roman guard came and saw what they were doing, they would just see that they were on a hunting trip because they had bows and arrows. Alternatively, the bows and arrows is supposed to remind us that the revolt against the Romans, which was led by Rabbi Akiva, who was the Rebbe of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And then just a fourth nice idea, which is given by Lubavitcher Rebbe, he explains that a bow and arrow, that represents a person's diligence and success in Torah study. The archer knows that the further he desires his arrow to reach, the more he must draw the string inward toward himself. The more he bends it, the further and faster the arrow will fly. So too it is with Torah study. The more time and effort one invests in Torah study, the more one will succeed and go far. So that's this idea of the bow and arrow. The more you bring it in, the farther it'll go. Rabbi also notes that the archer positions the bow and arrow close to his heart. Likewise, one must ensure the Torah study always remains close to one's heart. So it has been said about different rebbeim, they would go to the forest with their Hasidim to shoot bows and arrows on Baomer. And some people definitely have this practice. The legend has it that Rabbi Yehuda Tzvi of Startin, that he once shot an arrow in the direction of Vienna, and the arrow made its way to a royal palace and pierced the heart of a known enemy of the Jews, who was heir to the Austrian throne. This evidently saved the Jewish people from many evil decrees and hardships. So that is definitely a practice. So that's it in regard to Baomer. And everyone should remember to count Omer if they have not counted already.
Thank you, Roey.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we got
Thanks for
married
coming on.
on Baomer, so that's special.
Oh, you got married on Very nice.